Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Brightworks and another pro-level match of Beyond All Reason. Today we're going to be taking a look at a match that was submitted over on my Discord. Today, spawning right on the front lines is a Cortex commander, a commander that goes by the name of Angry Strawberry. Going to be clocking in at 35 true skill with some Silver Tails of Chevron, well known around the Brightworks community as well as being one of those top dog commanders. Excited to see what we're going to see on the front lines here in blue. Spawning more towards the backline on the southern side of the red team, Panini Pie. Spawning as an Armada commander. It always gets me a little twisted up whenever I see the Armada in red and the Cortex in blue, but anyways, going to be playing as an Armada commander, not like you really have a choice. Going to be playing as an Armada commander here on the southern side. Planning to go into a couple of those bots on today's map, which goes by the name of River Run. River Run, a cool one because of course it has these big rivers connecting all over the place. It's a pretty interesting map for playing around with vehicles. Bots tend to get hung up on these rivers quite a lot, especially the tick can, well, not traverse any of these. The only area where the tick is useful is on this center island. If I sort of zoom out to a higher perspective here, you can kind of see closer what I'm talking about. So basically, there's a very shallow bridge right here and right here that ticks can cross. So only between this island and this island are ticks generally relatively useful. Other than that, though, pretty much only going to be rascals, rovers, or any of those lighter units, the pawns, the grunts, all that sort of stuff on this map. As far as scouting purposes and early damage is going to be done anyways. It may seem like something small, but that little detail is one reason why Cortex might be a little bit more powerful on this map. Not to say Armada loses its competitive advantage though, just one of those early game things you have to worry just a little bit less about is 4 or 5 ticks running into your backline and completely shutting down your economy. Well, you can afford to neglect that anyways, as long as you're not on the central island, unlike El Barto, as well as Tortoise, both of which going to have to keep in mind that is a possibility. Biggest, the green commander here, the lime green commander, going to be holding the backline, I suppose. As far as this map goes, there's a couple of interesting decisions you have to make as far as who goes tech, who goes air, that sort of a thing. Typically speaking, there's not a dedicated tech player. If there ever was one, it's going to be where X32 is in the backline here. You can afford to go tech right here at the expense of your teammate, right? So if your teammate, in this case Beef Papa, wants to play an aggressive front line and wants to hold that and wants to play the contest, then you do have the opportunity to go tech back here. So I'm expecting that out of X32 right now. Indeed, just the way we're playing this right now with a whole bunch of extra energy converters, putting that energy into metal, indicates to me at the very least that our purple commander here wants to go for tech. Likewise, up here in the top left-hand corner, Hemorrhoid is going to be going for, what a sour name every time I have to say it, but Hemorrhoid going to be going for tech, I do believe as well here. You can see already a bunch of advanced solar panels queued up here. Part of the reason, of course, being that it's essentially a 3 versus 1 on the northern side and a 3 versus 1 or 2, sorry, a 3 versus 2 and a 3 versus 2 mirrored, of course, across the map. So you end up with that advantage where one player can be spared to do something in the backline as opposed to contributing on the front. But as we all well know, sometimes contributing on the front can be much more valuable than actually just ecoing up, hard ecoing in the backline. Certainly the best of the best would be trying to do both. Putting a little bit of aggression on the front line while managing an eco in the backline. Just putting a little more APM into the micro of the units in the backline. There we go. Nice little queue of wind turbines, nicely spaced out here as well. Going to go ahead and move on down the way here. I love to see it. Couple of pawns and grunts running by already though. We saw an attempted little run by, a little sneak by from Beef Papa, tried to get a couple of those rascals through, didn't manage to do it. The deflectionary forces from Panini Pie were strong and managed to clean all that up. Here's a couple of pawns running by though, and they will catch the Maroon Commander's production base. Yeah, okay, nice. Mex is unguarded by this LLT back here, mostly trying to keep those pesky little units out of the geothermal area up on top and failing to protect and neglecting the entire main command center right here. So 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 3 of those going down right here. 150 metal in total, definitely worth the loss of those 3 pawns. Incisor in a little bit of trouble here as well. These are all fair enough trades, right? These are all trades that as a bot player you're more than happy to take because every vehicle you shut down is worth more than any one bot that you lose here. So for instance, we see that we lost 1 pawn right here, more than efficient enough to justify that trade. Catching these incisors out and alone, yeah, absolutely the right decision to jump on top of these here. Strawberry agreeing apparently decides to send the grunts forward as well. Grunts a little bit lower DPS, a little bit higher range, a little bit slower than the pawn nowadays. Didn't used to be the case, but nowadays the pawn ever so slightly faster gives it a competitive edge, which is always cool to see. Always glad to see balance changes that equalize the two factions, right? Keep them in fair play with each other. Zyron will be in position here. Oh, nice command right there. Okay, Biggest actually paying attention to his units. Very nicely done. Manages to micro away the pawn. Very, very nicely done. Yeah, pawn gonna catch a constructor right here. That's a spectacular pickoff right there. Wake up, cries out the yellow commander right here. As, yeah, this pawn runs into the back line. Oh, don't tell me we're gonna get the second constructor too. Oh, it's gonna be close. Wow. All right, so 2 constructor kills and a couple mech kills for that pawn. Very, very nicely done right there by Biggest. Definitely justifies this heavy units transition that we're going for. As you can see, those maces are now streaming their way out of that bot lab. Very, very good to see. Everybody getting ready for mass unit production coming out of the backline here. You can see those Rocketeers being pumped out here, the Aggravators being pumped out, sent to the front lines. Gonna take a good hot long minute before they actually manage to arrive at the front lines, but once they do, of course, they can start applying pressure in many different ways, whether it's poking and prodding away at these T1 units or forcing back static defenses. Either way, going to be quite a hindrance here for the red team to deal with. A Ratomic package trying to hold this little peninsula of their own, locking it down with a couple of LLTs and some pawns. Not bad. One thing that's very, very powerful on this map is early bomber plays. Because wind speed is relatively powerful on this map, it's pretty much a given that anybody's going to go for quite a lot of wind turbines here. There's also a lot of space for it, so going for wind turbines, pretty much a no-brainer. Means that an early bomber or 2 or 5 can certainly do quite a lot of damage here. Twitch.tv underscore Gutai Cast 2. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The Dan commander right here. Going to move the commander forward with the transport, but go into a couple of those planes up here. So this is a little risky because suddenly, yeah, Hemorrhoid has to deal with the entire brunt of the force right here for the Cyan commander, who does have quite a fabulous economy, while only really having about half the scale of it. That being said, we are claiming these metal extractors here. You know what? 10 metal per second, gonna be going up against 17. Yeah, almost double the economy, a little less than double the economy. Here's a great play to equalize things, though. Yeah, the green commander, a little bit of sleep on the job here, trying to micro the push at the front line, but neglecting some of the defenses in the back, means that these pawns will manage to shut down 1, 2, 3, 4 metal extractors and counting. Eventually, I think this will be deflected right here, but that was a very simple move, very easy pull right there, very minimal pull for those units to come across the field and do so much damage. And getting that all set up again, it's going to take these constructors a good long while. It's definitely it's definitely removing a lot of the metal from the banks right here of the dark green commander at the very least. Yeah, Mace kind of wandering forward here. Not exactly ideal. Mace is sort of the tanks of the T1 bot era. Similar to the thugs, of course, but essentially the idea being whenever you can trade your pawns or your grunts for maces or thugs in a 1-on-X fight, X being the number of units you have, almost always worth it. We need to see this area rebuilt immediately here. There's some res bots out actually. Okay, you know what would be cool is resurrecting these metal extractors. That actually saves you from having to rebuild them and mitigates a lot of the cost associated with those going down. Doesn't spare you from the amount of time that they've been disabled, but certainly can save you from having to put even more metal on the field to generate that metal. Big bombing run. Preemptively scouted, so we do have some anti-air turrets. Not going to be nearly enough against this many of these Stormbringers, though, and there they go, connecting with a whole bunch of the wind turbines. Early air scout, accompanying air scout, pardon me, manages to scout out exactly where these wind turbines are, meaning that these bombers can take some very efficient routings. Beautiful bombing run so far. Yep, beelining directly towards that geothermal. It's a beautiful play. Okay, can we get it in one run? We will get it in one run. Beautiful bombing right there. My goodness. Gutai Cast 2 has absolutely killed it on the air transition right here. Bombers ravaging the backlines. Oh, this is a juicy connection too. So many wind turbines and energy converters. Oh, they were all sitting right next to each other as well. That is a terrible, terrible connection right there for the powder blue commander, who is going to have to deal with all that. We're headed into the backline now. Getting ready for it. There's engagements across the field here. The pink commander pushing into the lavender commander, and it looks like we are going to eventually have... Oh, they get the energy converter, so we're going to get the T2 lab. They want that T2 lab, but it's just a little too much. Yeah, I don't think they could get it. The Blitz is pushing forward right here. Uh-oh. They've stopped. They've stopped. Bombers coming in to take down some more of these wind turbines in the backline right here. Killing any hope this purple player had of setting this up on the front lines. We either need to commit to finishing this build power getting this lab up and running, or we need to eat up that lab and immediately finish up the T2 lab in the backline. Looks like the purple commander more than happy to just abandon this base in the backline though and just go ahead and move on to the front. Fighter's gonna come out from the green commander, but my goodness, they're just a little too late. Not that I think it was the green commander's position to be up in the air. Better somebody gets those fighters up and running than anybody, but those bombers were absolutely phenomenal. Definitely putting the red team in a tremendous position. Now, the blitzes will eventually be deflected here, but after doing a substantial amount of economic damage, we brought down multiple metal extractors along the way. One of them still stands somehow. But either way, those metal extractors going down aren't the entire brunt of this. There's also a bunch of wind turbines that just popped over here as well. Going to be very, very difficult to get back into this. Oh, there's another blitz. Managed to sneak on by. Yeah, there we go. Sure. Finds a constructor in the backline. Very annoying to deal with. That constructor goes down. Beautiful plays right here from the purple commander. That counterattack might be the only thing saving the blue team right now, because otherwise that bombing run was absolutely precious. T2 transition right here for Angry Strawberry, getting those T2 units up and running. Do we have a T2 economy up and running? No, we're just handing out the T2 cons for right now. Not the end of the world. You can see a little economic shenanigans going on in chat. Everybody sending metal across and around and all over the place. Up, down, left, and to the right. Now, the red team's clever about this. They might sniff out that there's a T2 transition based on the lack of movement right here. There's also so many maces. At this point, I'd like to see these eaten up. Now that we already have the T2 lab up and running, there's no reason to keep these maces around. We might as well eat those up. The grunts and pawns can still be useful as run-by forces and accompanying forces for those T2 fiends. But the maces really aren't going to be able to keep up with the T2 army, whether it's the Sheldons firing away, whether it's just a good old-fashioned lightning tank or a bull or anything like that. Yeah, those maces are just going to get outscaled, outpaced, and outclassed. Big old run-by up on the northern side. Yeah, maces trying desperately to keep up here. They're going to be able to fire away at the very least. Shut down maybe a couple of those. We're going to need some quicker units to deal with this, though. Now is not the time for a T2 transition. Oh, no. Oh, no. Misty Fire absolutely misreading this right here. We are in desperate need of some units to address all this. Han's headed in. They're going to catch the LLT right here. At the very least, these aren't naked expansions, so the LLTs will shut down a lot of this. Actually made the situation not as dire as I was thinking. Yeah, I imagine these were naked expansions, but with the LLTs here, I think this will actually end up being A-okay. A little bit of aggression over here means that the green commander will fall. The encroaching forces of the brown and orange commander both pushing back on that green commander, and it will mean that 1,250 metal and accompanying bots left in the scrap heap will fall right there. I like this aggression from the red team. Do they realize, though, that this aggression is prompted because of the T2 transition? We already have the T2 economy up and running. 6.4 metal per extractor is tremendous. 4 times the economy on its way up and running here for the angriest of strawberries. As soon as that T2 transition is complete, and by that I mean that the T2 economy is all set up and then we start full-blown T2 production, this is going to look phenomenal here for the blue commander. Even though it's a 2 versus 1 fight, it's all the economic power. I mean, essentially we have 2 economies versus 4, if you want to think of it in terms of T1 production. That's how efficient those T2 metal extractors are. Purple commander goes down over here, I guess, to try and clear out some of the static defenses. I don't hate it, but it does leave this line a little bit exposed here. And these are just shell shockers, extremely prone to, well, anything. Yeah. Destruction turret used to reclaim the wreckage of that commander. I quite like that, actually. Sometimes those construction turrets up on the front lines can be extremely valuable, even in ways that you didn't expect. Mesa's still managing to find a T1 army to trade out against. More efficient than I imagined they'd be. A couple of resbots getting caught in the friendly fire here. Well, not the friendly fire. The anything but friendly fire. Xenofox manages to stay alive, though. 18%, and that is just horrible. That's a terrible feeling, getting a commander that low, but just not being able to finish it off and knowing that it's going to retreat back. And you've given up so many resources in order to keep it all alive. Here come some orange hounds to try and push back a little bit of these defenses. And with all those maces out of the way right here, the question on everybody's mind is exactly what are we going to do in order to stop any kind of push right here from the red team. An overall lack of aggression right now, though, from the red. Hounds could certainly be doing quite a bit more. Pushing forward, applying pressure, all that good stuff. We do have a full-blown T2 transition right here for the red commander as well. Panini Pie going for a advanced geo up on the hillside. A couple of those advanced energy converters as well. Always good to see those. More efficient than the T1 version, so if you're planning on converting energy, it's almost always better to go for the advanced ones. Only caveat to that being, I guess, if you didn't have the tech for it and you needed to go T1, it's not the end of the world. I think it's like a 10% efficiency boost or something like that. Somebody can pull up the numbers and do it for you here. Let me highlight the conversion ratio. So 600 to 10.3 versus 70 to 1. It's very slightly more efficient to go for the advanced energy converters, which makes sense. You have to put quite a bit more resources into them as well, so they pay for themselves. I love the funneling right here. We have landmines being set up, heavy mines set up all over the place over here, and then we have these walls to deter units into those landmines. That's really clever. I like to see it. The usage of walls on the front line has been a debate for a good while, actually. How efficient can they really be? The question is really, how much can you influence your opponent into taking the pathway, right? At some certain extent, it becomes more efficient for them to just blast through the wall, take whatever time it takes to push through the wall, rather than try and go around it. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there, right? You have to try and figure out, is it worth building this wall if I know that the enemy's just going to break through it rather than going around it into the area that I want? Maybe you can leverage that, though, by making the wall thick in some areas and thin in some areas to intentionally, you know, create weak points, quote-unquote, that the enemy breaks through and then pushes through. That might be a good way of psychologically abusing the default behavior that most people would associate with. Getting real into the nitty-gritty of it. It's like I read you, you read me, sort of technical details of it, but I think anybody who follows along is going to see the value in that sort of an arrangement. Maces. Still being effective. I'm so surprised with how effective the maces have been this game. Mace is not traditionally one of those units that I think of in terms of long-term sustainability. This is going to get rolled over. I couldn't agree more. Those T2 hounds, perfect for blasting through static defense like this. Down goes a whole bunch of that static D here as these hounds dump-fired into oblivion. Yeah, LLTs, metal extractors, you name it. If it's T1, it's going to go. And Mace is continuing to fight over here as well. Now, more and more of these hounds are hitting the front lines right here for the Cyan Commander, so as soon as those hit the field, these maces are validated. But for the time being, I mean, yeah, taking down some LLTs, taking down some metal extractors, taking down all that good stuff. Multi-dimensional pressure right here for Misty Fire. Sounds more complex than it really is, just being pushed on multiple sides, all that really means. But it does put the Cyan Commander in a little bit of a pickle. We're working on that Sheldon ball right here. It's one of those Cortex classics. You go for a whole bunch of Sheldons, a couple of radar bots, and a couple jammer bots, as well as a whole bunch of accompanying fiends. You can throw some sumos in there if you're feeling particularly fancy, but other than that, there's not a whole lot more you can do to improve that composition. Gives you a lot of firepower, a lot of speed. Gives you good radar and radar jamming resistance. Oh, nice EMP bomber. Comes across and connects with a couple of those Sheldon. Very nicely done. Yeah, allowing these fiends to get the jump on top of El Barto's commander. It will go down, taking down all of those paralyzed Sheldon right there, as well as the fiends. Beautifully done right here from our blue commander with some green air support. Glad to see that Bigus has just settled into the air support role. Oftentimes it's more beneficial once you're comfortably into the air role, then it's a little more beneficial to your team to just stay air rather than transition back out. Here come some of those hounds. We do have an EMP bomber. These have been nerfed significantly, so they only drop 3 bombs, so you have to be very careful with how you deploy them. Yeah, you can see not as paralytic as once they were, but still very powerful if you don't have any anti-air included in your mixture. There we go, and you can see they also paralyze for a good long while. 20 seconds on that paralyzation is massive. Here come the fighters. Yeah, they're hunting for that bomber. You do not want to deal with that bomber anymore. Very tricky to use the new EMP bombers, so you have to be very careful about them. Nice spy bot connects with some Sheldon over here. We do have a big sharpshooter ball starting to build up as well. That's another one of those tricky situations where once you hit a snowball, it's very difficult to shut that down. You need a very specialized response, and typically that means a big grunt spam followed by some complex units, T3 units, T2 units, that sort of stuff. Very tricky to pull that out of a hat, so you need proper unit support, proper backline support in order to make that happen. One of the reasons why sharpshooters are so difficult to shut down. They require a little bit of teamwork, yeah. Who could have thought in 8 versus 8 you might need a little bit of teamwork to counter your enemy's strategies? I know. Agitators getting about as fabulous a trade as they could right now. All T1 chaff being thrown directly into their face. My goodness, I don't think I've seen agitators this efficient in a good hot minute. Wow, I mean, if we're gonna ball up the T2, they can even be efficient against them. Not nearly as efficient, but efficient nonetheless. Welder's pretty great here. I sing the praises of the welders quite often, but can you really doubt me? I mean, look how beefy these boys are. Standing up here on the front and taking these heavy hits like it doesn't even matter. Just continuing to march forward, granting vision all the while for these sharpshooters to do their good work. Absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love welder sharpshooter compositions. I think they're probably one of the best in the game. As far as your late game or late mid game goes, probably one of the strongest compositions that I can think of. Hounds eventually cleaned up here with EMP bomber support. The fusion reactors stay alive by some miracle or another. Absolutely what's holding together this entire thing right now for Strawberry is that critical energy production. We have an anti-nuke as well here. Bike is trying to D-gun down whatever. This is the tricky thing about going into air production. You are without units effectively. Wow, that wreckage managed to actually dodge the D-gun by becoming a wreckage as the D-gun passed over it. Hilarious. Gunship up in the air, gonna slowly start working on these maces here. I think it'll be enough eventually, but it is going to take a good long while. Luckily, EMP bomber gives you that good long while. This is one of the nice things about the new EMP bomber. To you know, give it some credit where credit is somewhat due. One of its strengths is the fact that because it EMPs things for so long, it gives you time to line up secondary bombing runs. So if you manage to land your EMP bombing, then you only need a single EMP bomber to keep that area EMP bombed. Does that make sense? I feel like that made sense. Red team looking way more aggressive here. Yeah, I gotta give it to the red team for pushing forward whenever possible, trying to find these openings right here, and indeed they do. Yeah, Pawns moving on forward, gonna find so much of this backline exposed right here. Ratmic package about to learn exactly the pain that it takes to, or the pain of encountering, pardon me, a Armada player sending their cheaper units all over the place. Well, I guess the Pawn isn't cheaper than the Grunt, but it packs a mean punch. Just like that, a bunch of the winter mines going down right here. These are spaced out, so at the very least they're not going to chain react so brutally. Still not a happy day to watch a bunch of Pawns melt away your very expensive energy infrastructure. Not a happy day whatsoever. Big push forward right here from the Strawberry. Trying to push her forces forward. She does catch a whole bunch of these negotiators, and that's nice. Those are expensive. Those are very, very expensive, especially for the T2 era. Getting those negotiators is great. Oh my goodness, that connection was beautiful though. You saw the spy bot to connect those, and then the missiles launched to try and drop their AoE effect on top of all of them. That was a pretty clever play right there from the Maroon Commander. Love to see it. Going to be enough to, at the very least, scare back Strawberry for the time being, while some proper defenses are set up, while things are resurrected. All this good stuff has to happen. Make sure that this area is actually properly secured, then we can go ahead and push back. Eventually, all the forces in orange are dealt with as well. I'm a little worried that the red team is stagnating here. They took the advantage that they thought they had and then didn't run away with it. Went ahead, get more ahead. Certainly a viable strategy. Loads of T2 fighters. Oh, they're protecting a valuable payload. Here it comes. Here it comes. Oh, and it goes down. That's a nuclear bomber connecting directly with the fusion reactor. At least one of the fusion reactors right here for Strawberry. That is a brutal bombing right there. It's only a single bomb that was dropped, but it was heard all around the world, as that nuclear bomber does manage to take down 1,000 energy production out of the blue commander's payroll here. Less important, less impactful now that the advanced geo is up and running, but certainly hurts to lose that much energy production, that much metal production, especially when you're in a really critical point like this where you need maximum unit production, but also you have to still think about that T2. My goodness, we're still pushing with T1 down here. Oh, don't like to see this. At this point, we're well into T2 here for Rabe 1983. All right, the pink commander here has got those T2 units well up and running here. We've got Tiger tanks. We should have some Quakers. Yeah, there's a Quaker. Probably gonna have a couple more of those as well. It's high past time that Beef Papa gets invested in some T2 here. No T2, well, of slowly getting some T2 metal extractors back here, way too slowly for my liking. So weird, the tech level on this southern side has just refused to increase, so we just have T1 going up against very minor T2. Slowly but surely getting these T2 mexes upgraded as well for the pink commander, but yeah, it feels like we're moving at the speed of molasses, getting the T2 transition underway. Meanwhile, we can see Strawberry is pushing very aggressively with the T2 economy that's been well propagated throughout the entirety of those metal extractors. A lot of unclaimed metal extractors over here. Looks like Strawberry will be happy to take those back over if Bicus doesn't. Not the end of the world. If your teammates soar about, you taking their metal extractors, you can always hand them over. Avoid conflict with your team is probably a good idea. Spybot's looking for that juicy connection. Strawberry definitely sniffing out, though, that there's got to be something, taking a look at her army, because otherwise these Sheldon should not be firing so efficiently against her forces. To nobody's surprise, it will be the spy bots. Yeah, there it goes. You do have to be careful with them, though. Strawberry good enough to know to constantly keep those Sheldon protected with a surplus of grunts being pumped out right here. You can see the grunt fabricatories pumping out more and more of those automaton forces, sending them to the front lines. Sorry, I've been playing a lot of Helldivers, and that keeps leaking into my psyche. That game's morale is infectious. For liberty. Sprinters moving forward. They're about to meet the welder. And absolutely regret it. Oh, some ticks moving forward too as well, though. Tick's a little bit more interesting a choice here. Not gonna work very good against the welder either. But they are quite good at surrounding those fat boys. Yeah, you know what? I'll give them credit for that. Certainly quite good against those fat boys. Obviously, the AoE for the fat boy is quite devastating to them, but once the once the fat boy has fired, you can get a nice little surround and probably do quite a bit of work. The mine's going off right here now. LRPC trying to fire away at this as well. The grunt streaming through the gaps in the walls on the southern side. Send some forces to try and clean that up, but for the time being, oh, look at these defensive setups we got over here, though. Scorpion batteries coming up all over the place for Strawberry. Not willing to lose any of this advantage anymore. Not willing to get harassed from any of these angles that her teammates aren't covering. Strawberry said, you know what, I'll do it myself. Very Thanos-like indeed. Besides, I'll just go ahead and build the static defense so I don't get flanked from my own flank. You can't have a flank if every side is sharp. That is what we call porking. Or porcupining. It's exactly what we see here. Fusion reactors coming up in mass here. Interesting choice away from the aphises. I guess it does decentralize your economy a little bit so that you end up not so vulnerable to bombing runs. Not a bad idea. Granted, the air player got a bit of a slower start this game, so going to be getting into air a little bit slower as well. Obviously, that tracks. Not a bad decision. Slightly less efficient, of course, but it's the price you pay for a little bit more safety. Beef Papa, meanwhile, learning just how brutal those T2 tanks can be. Inefficiency, the least of your worries here, as their firepower brushes past you, leaving you in the dust. Luckily, teammates will be here to intercept most of those forces moving forward. But my goodness, that could have been a nightmare. Yeah, Rape doing a great job of continuing to get back into this. Remember that blitz push took out a significant portion of the power down here. Now that it's been restored, build power is going to start working on a fusion reactor and some aphises, some energy converters, all that good stuff. Means that the pink economy is going to start to blossom. They're trying to degun down a whole bunch of these grunts that are moving forward here as well. Fiends mixed into the comp, though, means this will burn pretty quick, and down goes the pink commander. Okay, that's a nice pickoff right there. Definitely opens up the lane to a little bit more vehicle harassment. Ironically, I know I've just been trashing on the T1 vehicles this entire game, but now that the commander is out of the way, those T1 vehicles can actually be quite efficient. Getting them degunned pretty much the primary concern here, but as soon as those are out of the way, the commander that is, yeah, suddenly the degun's not exactly something you have to worry all too much about. Couple of fiends running by here. They'll be easily deflected by the blue commander. Northern side falling slowly but surely. Yeah, those sharpshooters quite heinous. That's a beautiful Fatboy connection, though. Only takes a couple good Fatboy connections in order to completely shut down a big ball of units like this. Sheldons, Hounds, you name it. Sharpshooters not quite snowballed yet, but we do have more and more of them marching forward right here. As soon as you get, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 of those built on the front lines, it can be very difficult to stop that. Structure over here will accidentally get caught for Strawberry, meaning the end of the Scorpion expansion. Finally stops propagating through all known reality. Big old T3 transition right now, though. Yeah, these Razorbacks, they're gonna have their work cut out for them, obviously pushing into these Scorpion turrets. Gonna be quite difficult. Pretty much the specialty of the Scorpion turret is blasting down those expensive T3 units, and there's plenty of other stuff to clean up the pawns marching forward here, the Sheldons anyway. We also have this enhanced exploiter, which is quite good at dealing with these heavily armored T3 units as well. And you know what? Just like that, the Razorbacks are blasted to smithereens. turn to corpses on the front lines. Beautiful, beautiful defense right there. Very efficient. Not taking all too much damage, basically deflecting it off of the static defenses. Essentially exactly what we're hoping for. Yeah, that was really, really nice. EMP Bomber's going to connect with a bunch of the sprinters over on the right-hand side. A couple of them break free of their EMP reprogramming bombings. Trying to think of creative things to call it, but it's pretty much what it is. It makes a big, big EMP burst. A couple managed to sneak by, though. Now they're in the back line, tearing apart some of those wind turbines. Just beautiful. Meanwhile, massive Marauder run by. I saw some purple on my screen. I wondered what that was. It's 100 Marauder in the backline right now. The red team suffering immensely. Beautiful, beautiful play from left field right here. That T3 transition was used to put Razorback on the front line for the red team. It was used to put Marauder in the back line for the blue team. And you can see just how effective they've been. Tearing apart these T1 bases, these T2 bases, even these early T3 bases, absolutely obliterating them. We definitely had enough forces to deal with Marauder, but that's assuming that we were in position and these units were being used on the front line to hold back these forces that are now pushing directly into that front line with no resistance. The army is pulled back, but it's already far, far too late. The Aphises have popped and the Marauder are not quite done yet. There's still a couple of them up and active right now. The Powder Pink Commander, the Light Pink Commander has been effectively ravaged. Nothing left in the tank for that commander. The northern side is holding. Slowly but very surely being pushed back. But for now they hold. Marauder cleaned up by the sharpshooter that returned home. Protect their motherland. What a brutal run by. We're going to see Razorbacks start to hit the field at this point. Going into a T2 air lab here as well. Interesting. Wonder why the sudden change of heart for the T2 air. I suppose just thinking, well, I've got the T2 economy. I might as well just use it to pump out a couple of those air fighters. Not the worst idea, certainly. Razorbacks marching in. They found an exposed opening here. A lot of Webers included here. I actually love the Weber. One of those units that I feel like gets underutilized a whole lot. Very, very efficient. What you're supposed to do is fight command with these every couple of steps so that they start reclaiming wherever they're going. The reason why they're so efficient, though, is because when they reclaim, they will also reclaim the corpses of the ones that have fallen, right? So if you lose half your Webers, you just fight command and they eat up all the corpses of their friends and their families that came along with them. And yeah, suddenly you've got yourself in this hilarious position where your army recycles itself down to the very last one, I guess. It's a ridiculously efficient unit if you use it properly. There we go. You can see them cleaning up that battlefield now. Eating up all that juicy, juicy metal and paralyzing anything else that gets in their way. Extremely effective when paired with the Recluse because, of course, their paralytic beam makes well, any target a stationary target. And that's exactly where the Recluse do provide their most value. Do we have a plan of attack against these Razorback? I think the answer is no. We're just slowly melting it down with whatever we can manage to build here. Misty Fire will step forward without a cloak on. Oh no, no cloak from the Cyan commander will mean that that commander goes down, taking down all the build power and a bunch of those wind turbines. But at the very least, taking down the Razorback as well. EMP Bomber tries to connect over here. Not quite enough EMP power right there. Not sure if it was just not a direct connection or if a single EMP Bomber just doesn't have the power for it anymore. Not new Marauders. Ironically, these Butler are detected. They're not Marauders, though. They're just trying to get some of that juicy, juicy reclaim out of the dead commander on the bottom side here. The pink commander actually still in the game, by the way. Left with a single commander, but trying desperately to rebuild. Always good to see that. The heart is still in the game. The spirit remains unbroken, even if the body is weak. The strength and certainty of the steel. Razorback, ooh, trying to get that fusion reactor. It's gonna be close. He does get it. The fusion reactor pops on that northern side, and that hurts. Losing the T2 lab was acceptable if, at the very least, the fusion reactor stays alive, because, of course, you can just rebuild using those res bots, but once the fusion reactor goes down, so much of your power production is down the drain. It's only a matter of time before the sharpshooters collapse on top of this northern side, and the blue team is on the clock. Xenofox standing there menacingly. There we go. Gets a degun on one of those Razorback, at the very least. We'll pay for it with the commander's life, though. Red commander trying desperately to rebuild here. Has the AGO here as well as the cloaked fusion reactor, so at the very least has the energy to go for these res bots. Always good to see. Probably need about 1 million more, though. Yeah, get these res bots working overtime. Start pumping out maybe 10, 15, 20 of them. Or just put them on repeat. Either way, getting that back up and resurrected is probably going to be top priority right now. EMP bombers shut down a bunch of these sharpshooters, buying critical seconds for the blue team here. EMP bombers finding their doom, though, as those T2 fighters do blast away at them. Gunship's moving in, but having a second thought about it. There we go. Fighter pull will clean up all those fighters, meaning that the gunships can move in, and there we go. I think the gunship pull is actually a really good one. Obviously, gunship's quite powerful, especially when dealing with well, units that don't have any anti-air capabilities. Razorback on the high ground gets the AGO of Tortoise and blows that to smithereens. Beautifully done right there. You can see the trails of devastation wherever these T3 units go. Mass Sheldon as well, punching through the defensive lines. Whoops, that's the wrong command, pardon me. 2, there we are. Sorry about that. Camera controls. Brilliant. It's the duel of the century. Pawn and Razorback working in tandem here. The Razorback's little cousin, the Grunt, versus his blood brother, the Pawn. Not to, not to get into the family politics of Beyond All Reason, but things get a little bit complicated around there, so got to be very careful. It's a sensitive subject for the Razorback. Gunships, sharpshooters, deploy. Not sure why we're not wiping those from existence. Definitely seems like a prime target. Strawberry's commander is in the line of duty here. Yeah, if we cloak that and move it forward, these Razorbacks aren't going to see it. Oh, it looks like that will be handed over to Misty Fire. Will we cloak it? The answer is no. A nicely resurrected commander goes down once again right here for the Cyan commander. Not sure why we didn't just cloak that for ourselves here as Strawberry. I guess not willing to micro it. Not willing to spend the APM when we're going to pull the trigger on this big assault wave over here. Either way, though, losing that commander does put the blue team one step further to obliteration. Fiend and Grunt pull to break the lines right here, and then the Sheldon firing away from the back. Mass Gunslinger is pretty interesting for this late into the T2 game. Typically not something we see at this point in the game, just because they lose their effectiveness quite severely. But we do have a Thor. Big Daddy Thor going to start rolling its way across the battlefield, grinding those wreck fields into decay. Oh, not actually. Oh, for some reason I thought those actually broke down the wreckage into debris. Interesting. Will it matter all too much, though, in the grand scheme of things? I doubt it. Thor takes down the T2 lab. Shouldn't be too long before we see the second one going down as well here. EMP beams also shutting down whatever they can. This EMP beams not necessarily meant for paralyzing big targets or severe targets, but what they are great for is doing a great job of keeping things paralyzed, right? They do just enough to keep things paralyzed, not so much that they can actually paralyze anything, significant here. No titans, no demons, that sort of thing. But for instance, you paralyze something with the EMP missile, it does give you a chance to keep it EMP'd. Just like that, though, the Thor wipes out all of the production in the middle of the map, means that the blue player can pull the trigger right now and send her forces forward. These Scorpion turrets holding the line valiantly. Reminds me of that roofing shingles ad. You guys know the one I'm talking about? I believe it was for a Japanese company that sold roofing shingles, and there's a bunch of guys holding arms. This is such a strange pull. I'll just let that die. If you know, you know, but otherwise you're just gonna have to try and look that up yourself. Good luck. Anyway, self-D on the Thor over here, actually. I like it. Especially that far behind enemy lines. Self-D'ing that Thor and denying them the res or the reclaim. Going to be quite valuable here. We actually have the anti-nuke in a little bit of trouble. Doesn't look like we're going thermonuclear here, at least for the blue team as far as I can tell. It looks like mostly we're interested in unit production, but it's always an option, right? If you just get that anti-nuke out of the way, most of the time people won't remember to rebuild it. And that can be, well, as might imagine, very, very bad for your health, more or less. I'm certainly one to speak. I'm number one anti-nuke forgetter. The stream of units being completely nullified by the gunships up here. The interaction between fighters and gunships and other fighters is pretty weird, though. The fighters will almost always prioritize the gunships, meaning that if your gunships are being attacked by enemy fighters and you send your fighters will trade phenomenally efficiently. It's a weird kind of a trade-off system, but it does mean that if you ever want to make your fighter trades more efficient, you can technically get a little bit more bang for your buck by including transports or gunships or anything like that with a higher target priority. It means that the enemy fighters will shoot their first volley at all of those rather than your fighters, and then you send your fighters in, and they'll mop up everything else after that. Weird little air tip of the day for you, but maybe it'll help. We're all the way back into T3 production right here for the Red Commander, impressively. We have a couple of those Vanguards up and running. The Starlights right here, the mobile tachyon beams, have been lancing down those Vanguards quite nicely. Yeah, actually not bad. This feels like the counterpart to the Sheldon. Look at these sniper bots with their little guns. Their little briefcase guns. Kind of want them to fold one up, actually. They won't do it so close to active duty. But I love these things so much. Here go the sharpshooters moving forward. I love the little pose they fold. Oh yeah, there we go. Off to work we go. I think that's what I'm going to call this video, or at the very least the clickbait for this video. Walking forward with their little briefcases. Ready to start the day right. Right behind their Big Papa Vanguard cousin. Spam eventually ceased up on the northern side. Glad we saw that from the Tan Commander's POV, shutting down that spam so we're not just wasting units there. Easy to keep that going and accidentally waste way more units than you actually imagined you did. Strawberry has not been asleep on the job, has been hard at work producing a couple of those demons. They'll be spotted for the first time now. Superpower of the demon being that it's extremely fast and extremely high DPS. You can think of them essentially as a more expensive Razorback. 6,000 metal compared to 3,800, nearly 4,000 metal, so we'll want to call that, what, two-thirds as efficient the Razorback is, more or less. Essentially the takeaway being that at a one-on-one the demon does win. It's the important note there. Anti-air has actually been included in the mix over here. Shuts down quite a few of those. One of those plays that can be really efficient and really beneficial early on, and well, especially in late games too. Getting some anti-air underneath your enemy air wall. You can see these demons are not tremendously powerful. Their anti-air missile is nothing to write home about, but the fact that they've been able to thin so many of these T1 fighters out means that this air wall is substantially thinner than it otherwise would have been if, yeah, no anti-air had been parked under here whatsoever. A couple of AA flak trucks can really make that difference clear. Went for some sumos in the backline to protect, but the demons, they do huge DPS. Even sumos with their heavy armor plating going to be melted down in an instant between those twin flame cannons coming out from those demons. One of them will go down with the assistance of the Scorpion turret, but the T2 lab falls and down goes, well, the build power, eventually. Here we are. There we go. Build power does fall eventually here for the Yellow Commander. This demon is still in the backline, and I have a feeling these are going to burn hot enough to tear down the remainders of the red armies. Resbots on the back of this to eat up all those juicy T3 units as well. You can always resurrect, but why bother when you can turn those puny Armada T3 units into fire-spewing T3 giants of Cortex industry. Love the coal furnace fire stacks. The smokestacks out of the back of the demons. Feels like a kind of a design decision, really. The Cortex engineers were like, feels like it's missing something. So they put some smoke coming out of the back of it, just to make sure that you knew this thing was downright dangerous. Fighters pulled to clean up some of the air forces over here. Lovely stuff. And clean up some of those air forces, they do indeed, taking down a whole bunch of the T1 air, and here come the gunships. Yeah, these are roughnecks. They're tough to shoot down. Gonna need more than your average T1 fighter in order to do this. Oh, we're gonna lose them all, though? Yikes. Gonna send all the gunslingers, or all of the gunships. I think we only needed about a quarter of that many, but either way, probably worth it to knock out the Orange Commander's production entirely here, meaning that the entire northern section is essentially without any proper T3. We do have some T3 production, some very light T3 production coming out from Hemorrhoid Space, but not nearly enough to save them from the onslaught of production coming out of now the blue facility, the green facilities, and all the rest. Southern side looking a little thin here too. Yeah, T2 constructor gonna get caught right here. Thor more than happy to blast that down. This is the major damage though. Strawberry blasting apart a whole bunch of the red economy. The energy converters go up, the build power lights up next. And finally, I think we will conclude our siege on the red base with a nice, juicy red advanced fusion reactor explosion. Boom goes the base, and with it, the red team folds. Beautiful, beautiful back and forth from both of these teams. The red team with some stellar aggression, especially up through the northern sector, and I thought they were going to win it on the southern side too, but just not aggressive enough with that T2 transition here from the southern side. Eventually breaking through and indeed winning the Golden Cow Award. Angry Strawberry and her team managed to claim victory in today's matchup Beyond All Reason. Leave a like down below if you like these daily Beyond All Reason casts. I'm always happy to hear from you guys if you have any feedback for me as far as that's concerned. But other than that, I will see you in the very next game of Beyond All Reason, and I sure hope you have a great rest of your evening. Peace out, everybody.